a look at where they started and where they ended up by 2015, and we'll go from there. It was the 1980s. They were on the East Coast. The company was called a Bon Pon. They were opening in strip malls and airports and the like. But after a while, they decided to move west and buy some new stuff. That business was St. Louis Bakery. We're looking at 20 locations in St. Louis. Over the course of a few years, they opened about 100 more. That's when they decided anything that was outside of St. Louis, they were just going to call Panera Bread. Now, having opened those additional bakeries, because they did, they bought those first 20 and then opened another 100 St. Louis bakeries by 1997. And so they decided that all of the St. Louis bakeries that were outside of St. Louis, they were going to call Panera Bread. They divested themselves of their remaining Bon Pon units and threw themselves completely into the new fast casual Panera Bread Cafe. Panera was a leader in the fast casual restaurant market, and they were solidly aiming at a focused niche market, the urbanites who wanted the speed of fast food with the niceties and amenities of a full-service restaurant. Now, looking at the current situation, as this strategic map shows, Panera is a strong contender in that fast casual market that they helped to inspire. But more significantly, their closest competitors, well, they're heavy on the casual, but really not so much heavy on the fast. We're looking at full-service restaurants like Buffalo Wild Wings and Olive Garden, TGI Fridays, Cracker Barrel. The restaurants like Qdoba and Noodles and Company and Firehouse Subs, they're fast and casual, but they're not Panera Bread. They don't have the bread and the quality that Panera has. Then you got poor little Five Guys over here. They make great burgers, but they just don't have the numbers of units and they don't have the numbers of menu items that Panera up here has. Now, we've got their revenue from their company-owned bakery cafes, which are going up from the years 2011 to 2015, which is exactly what we want to see. And we've got revenue streams from other sources. First of all, about that fresh bread, they've got 24 regional units that bake the bread. Well, they don't bake the bread. They make the dough, though. Just like you would at home, artisan bread made by hand. They make all the dough, and right before it's ready to bake, they package it up and they ship it to all of the stores in their region. So those fresh dough purchases that the franchise markets have to make are included in their revenues. And while the franchise revenues are imputed directly to the franchisees, the royalties and fees that the franchise units have to pay are part of the corporation's revenue stream. Taking a look at the revenues from both the corporate and franchise stores, we can see here that the franchise stores have a slightly higher revenue than the corporate stores, but in both cases, revenues do continue to rise. That can probably be explained by the fact that there are slightly more franchise stores than there are corporate stores. Now, you've got to consider, they've got the consistent quality with their bread. They make 14 different varieties, and they are all consistently very good. But other ingredients like lettuce can only last so long on a truck. Those they source from other suppliers more regionally, but quality control dictates that those sources be vetted thoroughly. Among other things, for example, Their meats should be antibiotic-free because they are shooting for an organic menu. This is what their customers are expecting. Now, Panera sells more baked products than just bread, but their sweet bakery items are also actually outsourced, coming from independent distributors. When they arrive in store, they're topped and given their final touches before being sold to the customers. Panera has several strategies and programs designed to maximize all channels of marketing available. Now, competitors might take advantage of the omnichannel marketing strategy, but do they have the quality of food, and have they mastered the fast casual that Panera's got? First and foremost among those is Panera 2.0, the phone app that allows customers to place their orders, customize their orders, and pay for their orders all from their phone. They can then from their phone decide how they want that food delivered to them. They can use the rapid pickup service where Panera makes the food, puts it in a bag, puts the customer's name on it, puts it on a shelf, you come in, pick it up, and go. Or it can be delivered to where you are if you're close enough. Or finally, if you go in store, you can still order from their phone, but then you can click order from my table, and they will bring it directly out to your table after you place the order on your phone. The delivering and catering portions of their business were slated to begin in earnest in 2016. Now, they considered the option of using third-party delivery services, but decided that the company would be better able to control for quality if they trained their own delivery staff. Panera at Home is their line of foods that are designed to be sold in the grocery store. And it's great for them because the grocery store winds up paying the point of sale cost instead of Panera. The Panera Bread Foundation is the nonprofit arm of Panera Bread Incorporated. They started the Panera Cares initiative in 2010 with one location in St. Louis. They now have 4, including the one in St. Louis, plus Boston, Portland, Oregon, and Dearborn, Michigan. Customers can come in, pay what they want, maybe more, maybe less than the suggested amount, but it allows patrons to come in, get a meal, and if they can't afford to pay it, they will still be fed. Now, we start looking at profit margins. I want to know why they're going down like a kid going down a playground slide. This requires taking a closer look at their financial documents. Expenses, which, not surprisingly, are going up just like the revenues are. This is what you would expect to see, variable expenses increasing as revenues increase. There's no surprise here. Taking a look at the assets, we see that cash, it goes up and down, current assets go up and down, long-term assets go up and up. So what is driving the increase in assets? When we take a look at the working capital, we can see that the increased assets are not being backed by liabilities. Look at what happened in 2013, where they had more liabilities than assets. And even by 2015, they still weren't quite halfway over their 2012 high of working capital. Now here we can see on the returns, the return on assets is not too bad. It's up, down. Return on invested capital is interesting, especially when you compare it to the return on equities, because the return on equities is nice, it's very high, maybe deceptively high. But when we start taking a look at the return on invested capital, that indicates a big chunk of invested capital isn't from equity. That means it's not from stock purchases, and it's not from revenue. Still not sure if it's loans that's causing the problem? Take a look here at the massive increase in long-term liabilities and the overall increase in total liabilities. Right here is all the proof we need that Panera Bread has been debt financing. If we look at the long-term debt-to-equity ratio, there's a lot more long-term debt financing at Panera Bread than there is equity. Now, this is a ratio investors usually like to see below 0.25, but even more significant is the extremely high total debt-to-equity ratio. The company has a huge amount of debt as of 2015. And if you weren't convinced by that, their interest coverage has dropped. Not saying that it's at a horrible, horrible place, but it's certainly quite a nosedive from their high in 2013 to their low point in 2015. Stockholders' equity didn't do anything really terribly remarkable, and that might be in part because the company bought back $750 million worth of shares in 2015. Now, as we can see, in 2013, earnings per share was at its highest during the 5-year period of 2011 to 2015, and we can also see that both basic and diluted EPS are about the same all the way through, which indicates that Panera had few, if any, convertible stocks. So, in 2015, when they began to buy back stock, Panera was actually retiring it. Looking back to see what got Panera into this boat, we're going to go back a few years to 2006, when they planned to add stores to their already 1,027 stores to increase the number to 2,000 by 2010. What could go wrong? The same thing that went wrong for everybody else, the Great Recession. Aside from the very real threat that occurred with the Great Recession, are the threats that they need to anticipate. What if these competitors over here decided to grow bigger? Or what if these competitors over here decided to add fast casual units that matched Panera? In spite of the effects of the Great Recession, the 2015 restaurant industry was still a huge dynamic bustle of business. Restaurants were still the second biggest employer. Most adults had worked at least for some time at a restaurant. 3 out of 4 Americans were eating at home, but Panera at Home had that covered. Meanwhile, the 25% who were eating out every day were spending a combined total of about $1.9 billion. Even though 70% of restaurants were mom-and-pop locations that only had a single unit, chains could pull in as much as $5 billion a year, where the average was under $1 million. Recommendations? First, Panera's management needs to consider how committed they are to their omnichannel marketing. They've got Panera 2.0, they've got Panera at Home, they've got the counter sales, the drive-thrus, they've got delivery, they've got catering. They need to decide, are we going to support this with divisions, department heads, or are we going to go back and focus on counter sales and drive-thru?